Okay, so what do we want to talk about today? I don't know. I was thinking we talked about anger and forgiveness last time. Another spin on that would be how to get to peace while you are facing triggers. It's a little bit more advanced, but we can do that. And then I always love questions, so whatever questions come up, please do ask those because I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to talk about specific scenarios. The thing about triggers that we always, first of all, let me start here. We have to first know ourselves well enough to know when we're triggered. And because what a trigger actually feels like is a disturbance or a hard emotion that our mind will tell us is completely justified. So for example, a trigger happens and you get really angry. Your mind is going to immediately tell you all the reasons why you should be really angry about that. So somebody did something to you and you feel angry about it. You aren't going to necessarily in that moment recognize that you're triggered, but that is really the key to moving out of the state that you're in and moving past it, is being able to recognize that you are triggered in the moment. To be able to give yourself context to what's happening in your body. Hi, Heather. Thank you for the like, my dear. So, triggers pretty much always result in two emotional experiences. Hey, gorgeous hearted. Nice to see you, my dear. Welcome. And thank you for all the likes this week. I'm glad that things are resonating for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm just getting started, so plenty of time for any particular questions. I'm speaking about, hello. So I'm speaking right now about feeling triggered because I know last week we talked more about anger and forgiveness. This week I was thinking about kind of looking at that from a different lens, which is understanding how to stay in your peace around triggers. So I'm talking about triggers right now. Hi, W Boop. Hi, Jamie. Okay, so triggers will ultimately result in two main feelings, two main experiences, anger and fear. And honestly, those are the two that we struggle with the most. Those are like the two big ones. When we talk about hard emotions really kind of fall into like those two categories. There's often a lot of other emotions within the experience, like overwhelm, like confusion, like sadness, like hurt. Hurt is probably also a big one, but anger and fear are the ones that I think people struggle with the most. So it's really helpful in the moment to be able to recognize when you're triggered. It's challenging though, because again, when you go through the experience, when you are triggered, anger comes up. Let's say somebody does something and it triggers you, but your mind is telling you they did this. So you're blaming them in that moment, and it feels really justified because you've got the story running. If something happens in your life and automatically you feel that sense of anxiety is mainly fear. So the term anxiety is just the term that we use to describe the experience that we feel in our bodies, but the emotion is fear. It's just fear that's manifested in our bodies. So whenever you feel anxiety, it's fear. And that is really helpful to be able to, in the moment, recognize, oh, I was triggered. I'm feeling scared. But again, your mind is going to tell you all the reasons why you should be scared. So it's helpful to be able to catch it and know what are the experiences that you particularly have that tell you that you are in one of those states? Okay, so I can tell that when I am triggered in a fear state, that oftentimes I'm taking shallow breaths. So I'm just kind of going, that kind of thing. I can tell that I'm in a fear state when I am kind of irritable. Like I don't have as much patience for things because really my mind is still running the fearful thoughts over and over. So I can't really concentrate, and then I don't really have patience for things because half my mind is on something else. I can tell I'm in a fear state when my heartbeat is beating really fast. So those are some examples. I can tell that I'm in an angry triggered state. It's pretty easy now to tell, but I can tell when I'm just constricted, when I'm maybe like I'm like clenching my jaw, or when I kind of am clenching my hands, or when a really helpful one is like if you're angry at certain people, if you're like rolling your eyes at them, or like when they talk or something, you like turn away and you're like, whatever, like you're probably triggered by that person. So I think that it's really important to be able to recognize whatever the symptoms are of the experience of the trigger. The reason that I say this is because you're trying to catch the trigger early. The thing about triggers is, again, the automatic response that we feel is going to be an outward pointing response. I'm angry at you. I'm angry at this person. I'm scared of this. I'm scared of this outcome. I'm scared of this situation. I'm scared of having this conversation. I'm scared of whatever. I'm scared of this possibility. Okay? So they're pointing outwards. And the thing about that is that you can't control whatever that thing is that you're pointing at, that the emotion is pointing at. You can't control it, either the person or the situation. And you're certainly not going to be able to solve any kind of problem or make an aligned, like a really soul-aligned decision if you're in a state of fear or anger. Because you can't, your focus is pointing outward to something that you can't control. And so you're kind of grasping onto it to try to control it. So the key is to recognize the experience that you are triggered, and immediately, as soon as possible, go into feeling of feelings. So I talked about that. I mean, I talk about this all the time. So, feeling of feelings, it's the most foundational thing that we humans can do, and I hope someday that every human will have a feeling of feelings practice. Because when you have a practice of feeling your feelings, what you're doing is you're taking that emotion that's pointed outwards and you're pointing it back at yourself, because you can control you. The anxiety / fear and the anger, it doesn't always feel like you can control those, but that's exactly what you do have control over. You see, we've been running with this line in our heads for so long that these things are not controllable. And we have this lie that's really prevalent right now that says that our anxiety can't be helped, that our anxiety can't be changed, so we have to change everything around us in order that we feel safe. And that's being called boundaries in a lot of ways, and this is not really a helpful perspective, because what that then sets you up for is more suffering, because what happens is you try to do what you think is the right thing to do, which is set a boundary, but that just means that you're trying to control the people around you. I can talk about what a boundary actually is, which I say right here, but we can get into more of the details. But we're not trying to control the people around us or the situations around us in order that we feel safe. That's actually the opposite of what we want, because what we actually want is to feel super empowered and strong and at peace within ourselves, that we know we can handle whatever comes up. And that starts with being able to face the triggers that are currently happening. Because this is what I always say too. You know, so many of us, we want to like reach this higher version of ourselves, right? We have this like vision of who we want to be or the life that we want to live, and it feels really out of reach. But the only reason it feels out of reach is because we don't have the skills yet to apply to our lives in order to meet the hard moments that it's going to take to get there. Does that make sense? So whatever your purpose is, whatever that vision is that you have for your life, it's going to take you doing hard things to get there, right? It's not like we reach enlightenment someday and then our path is automatically like everything opens up for us and it's like easy. The truth is, you're a human being and you signed up for this journey, so you are going to meet challenges along the way. The goal is not to not meet challenges, it's to have so much confidence and trust in yourself that you can meet any challenge. Hold on a second. So that you don't actually need to control anything. And when a challenge does arise, your perspective of it changes so that it does feel easy. Okay, I know I had some questions, so hold on a second. Okay, somebody said Jaden said I have BPD and to make my life very hard. Do you have any advice? The only thing that I would say is that some people have a hard time with this message, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's been something that's been really important in my journey, and I think it's important for other people when they're ready. And that is that when you learn about some kind of like diagnosis, let's say, it's really helpful because now you have a word for whatever it is you've been experiencing, and it's okay to continue to utilize some of the explanation, some of the verbiage to describe your experience. However, I find that labeling ourselves with any type of experience like that, like a diagnosis, is not really helpful in the long run, because what it does is limit us to that particular experience, so that it feels like we can't get beyond that experience. And I'm not saying, in fact, I would strongly suggest that people seek out the tools and the assistance and the help that they need, whether that is, therapy, or whether that is support groups, or whether that is medication. I'm a big proponent of finding the tools and the things that you need to be able to feel more stable. And I would say at the same time, if we can move away from describing our experience with these terms, we can actually move towards an experience that goes beyond the experience of whatever the diagnosis is. And I'm talking like mental health, physical health, whatever. And I know not everybody's going to be ready to hear that, but it is true, because when you describe your experience and say like this experience is really hard, I think what I hear from that is actually kind of goes along with what I've been saying, which is that we need to learn to feel our feelings, because what the challenge of any diagnosis comes with is hard emotions. So I'm not telling you to not feel the hard emotions. As a matter of fact, I'm saying like you have to actually be more in tune with your emotions. That's why I'm saying even recognizing your triggers. But the experience of something that's, let's say, chronic, or something that's kind of always there, we feel like we feel like it has power over us, which is why we feel like it makes our life hard. So the only way to take that power back is to own the experience, to take accountability for the experience, to take accountability, to take responsibility for the experience of our life. And what that means is that we need to feel the really hard feelings that come up towards whatever the diagnosis, whatever the thing is that we feel like is holding power over us. Because this is actually really in line with what I was just saying about triggers. And I have a practice in my link tree in my bio that is the Feeling of Feelings practice. You can, it's available there. You can have it for life. It's $25. It's real cheap. That's the only way that I'm making money on any of this. So I want it to be accessible to everybody because I think every human needs a practice to be able to feel their feelings. See, when you're not owning the experience, when you're not owning the feelings that are coming up from an experience, you're scared of it. You're running away from it. You see it as the enemy. And when you're pointing again outward at something else, saying this thing has power over me, saying this thing is the enemy, you're never going to achieve an experience of peace in your life. So, how do we take the power back from that thing? We actually have to own the sadness and the fear and the hurt, perhaps. And when you start to own that experience and really feel those feelings, you start to not need it to change so much. And when we get to this place where we're not so obsessed with this thing needing to change, it's more likely that it will change, that we will feel better. Because we're not holding on so tightly to this, to getting rid of this thing. It no longer has that power. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, oh yeah, hey boss. Spot on, good. Yes, please talk about what boundaries are. Okay, great. Great way to grow inaccountable, and that helps in identity. Yes. You want to be, hey gorgeous heart. So where do you want to be? I'm sure I mentioned like a state of peace. So boundaries, hold on. You know, let's do a little practice of this. You were saying like a state of not needing, oh, right, not needing to control anything. Yeah, because that's exactly, and being able to handle anything. Yes, and you know what, the only thing that's missing in that case is self-trust. Because right now you don't fully trust yourself to handle anything. You don't fully trust that you'll be okay. And so what we need to actually work on is building the self-trust. The Feeling of Feelings exercise is one of the primary ways that you build trust with yourself. Why? Because what's happening when you feel the anxiety, when you feel fear, which is like the most prevalent experience of like whatever the heart, like it's the most prevalent heart experience, heart feeling, I should say. So when, wait, what was I saying? Hold on. Okay, right. Anxiety. So fear. Because what's actually happening when you feel fear, when you're triggered, is your inner child is saying, I'm really scared. It's actually your inner child. Because whatever is triggering you, because again, the anxiety and the anger can't come without a trigger. So the trigger happens, you feel the emotion, that's your inner child saying, that thing is scaring me. And I feel really unsafe. And what it actually needs you to do is not to tell you to not feel, hold on. It's not that you have to convince yourself that you're safe. Because think about it like a child. Like, yes, the child wants to feel safe, but more than anything, the child wants to feel heard. Like, with any hard emotion, it's like, yeah, I hear you, and I'm right here. Like, of course you're scared. Of course you're sad. Of course you're hurt. Of course you're angry. It's really radical validation of anything that's coming up. And really it's because your inner child, like you as a child, you weren't safe to be able to feel those things. Whenever you were scared, let's say, you were just told that you didn't need to be scared, that everything's okay, that there's nothing wrong. But that doesn't really solve the fear. That doesn't really like get rid of the fear. Or when you're angry, when you were angry as a kid, you were probably just kind of dismissed or told to calm down or told to go to your room or whatever it was. So these emotions weren't welcome when you were a child, and that's why they still come up and you still feel like they have power over you, because you weren't really taught how to navigate them. So it is your responsibility to learn how to do that now. Thank you for the follows, my dears. So yeah, this is why feeling of feelings is so important, because now what you're doing is you're essentially reparenting yourself. You are helping yourself to feel the hard feelings that you weren't able to feel as a child. And you're validating them. The validation is just important as the feeling of them. Right? So it's really important that you have that practice. And it only takes a few minutes. So you can check that out in my link tree if you feel so inclined. But I definitely think it's the first step in facing anything. It's the first step. And I hope you see, like, I'll give you we'll do a practice. We'll do a practice. A few minute practice here so that you get an idea of what it is. So I want you guys to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart. Take a few deep breaths. And breathe in and breathe out slowly. Okay, this is grounding. I want you to think of an experience right now that scares you. Whatever that anxiety is that you feel, identify the situation or the individuals involved. Take a breath. You can do this in your head right now, but you're going to speak out loud in a moment. Now you're going to say out loud, parts of me feels scared. Because. And then I want you to explain why you're scared. Take a minute to do that. Come back to your breath. Breathe in and out slowly. Then you're going to say out loud, "Of course I feel scared." Because, and say out loud why it makes complete sense that you are scared. There's no other way that you could possibly feel but scared. Say it out loud to yourself. Always coming back to your breath. Even if that, "of course I'm scared," is because I've never experienced something like this before, or I really care about this person and of course I'm scared of losing them. Or I'm not really sure how to have this conversation, and of course I'm scared I'll say something wrong. Or feel the weight of the fear. Release your cheekbones, your eyes, your jaw, your shoulders. Let your mouth be open. Take a breath. Breathe out. Feel the heaviness of what it means to have been carrying that fear. If tears come, let them. You can say it again. You can say, "Of course I'm scared. There's no other way I should possibly feel but scared." Okay, I want you to come back. Slowly open your eyes and take some breaths. How did that feel? So, this is really what your inner child needs, is to be seen, heard, and understood. You're welcome, Evermore. How did that feel for you? If anybody else wants to share, keep taking deep breaths. That's wonderful, Nat. I'm so glad to hear that. Like a relief and like I'm allowed to be scared. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're missing so much of the time, is the permission to feel scared. Giving ourselves permission to feel scared, to actually sit in the fear. And you've probably heard therapists or people say that kind of thing, that you just have to sit with the feeling. And I remember never really knowing what that meant. Like, what does that mean? Sit with the feeling. What am I supposed to do? Just live with it forever? You know? And when I learned this practice, that is when it was like, for me, that's what it means to sit with the feeling, because I don't think it's just about sitting with the feeling and like allowing it to pass over time. I think it really is genuinely necessary to validate the feeling, because that's really what we're looking for. And you also can spend so much time knowing the feeling's there, but still running from it, by just living our daily lives. We can busy ourselves so much and never actually look at that feeling. And so many times we're actually really scared. Like, we're actually scared to look at the fear. We're afraid of looking at the fear. Scared of being scared, looking at the fear, right? The interesting thing is, once we actually look at it and we actually say, like, anything that comes up, of course, of course, of course you are. Instead of what our mind keeps telling us, which is, I don't know why you can't get over this. You should just be able to move on from this. I don't know why you're making such a big deal about this. I don't know why I'm so anxious about this. I don't know why I keep ruminating about this. It's not that big of a deal. They really didn't mean it. I'm sure that they really didn't mean what they said. I know they didn't mean it. So, like, why can I not stop thinking about it? We try to minimize it. Our brain tries to minimize it because we're so scared of looking at the feeling, when looking at the feeling is exactly what we need to do in order to move on from the feeling. Yeah, Nat, my therapist told me for years to validate myself but didn't share how. Evermore, yes, Nat, this was actually helpful modeling of it. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, I was kind of like wondering whether we should do a practice, but it felt right to do today, so I'm so glad that you all feel that it helped, because you can see that this took just a few minutes. And you know what's really interesting is we spend days, weeks, months, years, some people spend decades running from one feeling. And this practice took how many minutes? 3, 4? And I'm not saying for deep things, you might need a few sessions of this. But it will pass, but you have to and you have to allow yourself to feel the weight of it. That's the important thing. So I do have that practice available, so you have it for lifetime access, because I don't post it in the follow-up videos that I post. And it is very specific in the language that we use and in what we do in the practice. So if you feel so inclined, if you have interest, or you want to just show your thanks, go ahead and download that. Let me know if you have any issues. I truly believe that with this one practice, the world would be so much better. If we all just knew how to do this, we would be so much better. You know why? Is because we oftentimes, again, the two triggered emotions, the major emotions that are the trigger emotions, fear, which we call anxiety, and anger. And when we learn to actually face these emotions, actually feel them, that's why I was saying you've got to feel the heaviness of it. And oftentimes, I don't know if it happened for any of you while you were doing it this time, because we're doing it together, but if you're on your own, giving yourself that space and time, more often than not, doing this practice, I will cry, because I'm actually finally feeling the fear or the sadness or the hurt. And that's part of the energetic release of the emotion. So that's the emotion like physically coming out of your body. Take a deep breath. Oh, I'm so glad, my dears, that it really resonated for you. It's a really important practice. And I agree with you. I had therapists for a long time who told me, like, you just have to sit with it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just go along with my life. And there's value in that, in being able to continue doing the things that you were going to do anyway, even with that emotion being there. However, I don't think that that's always the answer. I think more often than not, in my opinion, you need an actual practice, something like to do in order to move the energy through you, because the emotion is just energy. And let me also say this, you should not be making like important decisions when you're in a state of fear or anger. Even more so, why you need to have this practice available in order. And guess what? We didn't use any tools. We didn't use any props. We used ourselves. We used our voice. So this is accessible at any time, because all you need is you and your truth. And if you're scared to do it for something, if you're like, I'm really scared to like feel my feelings about this thing, then feel that. Right? Like you got into a fight with somebody or something, you got into an argument with somebody, and now you're like, I don't know if I should talk to them about it. I don't know, like, what should I do about it? I'm really scared to even like feel this fear or this anger. Maybe there's anger there and you're like, I'm really scared to feel this anger. Because what happens with the relationship? Right? Then we start like kind of trying to project ahead and trying to like plan our every move so that we minimize chances of any risk of discomfort, or retaliation or whatever it is that you're scared of. Feel the fear about the fear then. Start there. Like, I'm really scared of feeling this fear. Of course I'm scared of feeling this fear. Explain why. Do you have any questions, my dears? So I feel like I was gonna say something, but now I lost my train of thought. I keep losing my train of thought this evening. Yeah, so I think what I was gonna say was that right, making decisions. So you're not going to make a very helpful decision when you're in a state of anger or fear. So even more so why you need a practice, because the second, and that's why I was talking about triggers earlier, the second you recognize, ooh, I'm in this triggered state. Oh, there are those symptoms. Let me like put aside some time to feel my feelings. And at first, you might need to, like I always say at first when you're starting out, like book yourself a day where you don't do anything, or even if that's not possible, like an afternoon, an evening, whatever. I just say this because, like, especially when you're first starting the practice and you're actually allowing your body for probably the first time in a long time to fully feel the weight of whatever the emotion is that's coming up, or the multiple emotions. Like you might have to sit with the heaviness of that. You're not just gonna like come out of the practice and like boop, be like, okay, great, now I'm ready to back to like joy. No, it's gonna be like, you're going to have to probably sit with that heaviness for a little while, and you don't want to like have something planned right after that, because the whole point is that we're allowing ourselves to actually process the emotion. So when you've, even though the practice only takes a few minutes, I probably haven't ever like sat in that practice for more than maybe like 20 minutes or so, and even that's, it just depends on how many emotions. Like I'll say, you know, that parts of me feel really sad. You know, there's like, I'll do all of the emotions. I'll do the fear, I'll do the sadness, I'll do the frustration, whatever it is. So the practice itself doesn't take very long, but like then just allowing yourself and being really kind to yourself for the rest of that day, and giving yourself the space to just like be in that experience of recognizing what you just released is really important. Like take a bubble bath. Allow yourself the time to cry. So really take that to heart. Take that into consideration. As you get really good at it, like now I can just do it. I take literally a few minutes, 5 minutes, and I'm pretty much usually back to like, okay. Okay, so, okay. Sharing, okay, hold on. Don't think I even know what a boundary is for myself. Okay, yes, me neither, Evermore. Can you give an example? Sure. Okay. Boundaries. I'll tell you what I think people think boundaries are, which is really unhelpful. And that is that people think that boundaries are an expression towards somebody about your expectations of how they treat you. Right? People think boundaries are, well, I don't accept people to talk to me that way. I don't accept people doing this. I don't accept people doing that. Does that sound familiar? This language of I don't accept, it makes no sense, really. Because like, why it's not even for you to accept or not accept. It just, that thing, it just is that thing. So, what we think a boundary is then, in that case, is a rule for other people to follow. Like, my boundary is that I don't accept people speaking, like, raising their voice at me, for example. That's not a boundary. That means you're trying to, like, set a rule. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, actually, about the triggers. So when we feel a trigger, we think, we think that we now need to control whatever the trigger is in order to minimize or decrease the risk of whatever we're scared of happening. So we try to control the external person or the external circumstances. This is the same thing. What you're actually trying to do is control people. So I can tell someone, like, don't raise your voice at me. That's fine if you want to say that, but that's not a boundary. What a boundary would look like in this case would be when someone raises their voice at me, I leave. Because a boundary is a promise to yourself, not a rule for another person. So what that means is that I'm promising myself that when somebody raises their voice at me, I leave. And then my only job is to honor my promise to myself. You see, I think actually like a good title for this live is like building self-trust, because what we just talked about in the feelings of feelings practice is all about self-trust, because now you're building trust that you adult you is showing up for inner child you by allowing inner child to feel the feelings, and that you adult you will show up every single time. You adult you will allow any and all emotions to come up, however much it needs to come up, whenever it needs to come up, however long. You adult you is going to allow those emotions, and you're going to show up every time when your inner child needs you, right? This is you, basically adult you promising adult you that you're going to show up. So now when somebody raises their voice at me, I'm not going to raise my voice back and try to argue back and get into an argument and go back and forth and back and forth. And no, I'm not going to engage in that, because my promise to myself is that I leave. And every time I keep the promise to myself, I build trust that I do keep my own promises, that I do keep myself safe. So here's the other thing, is we think that, so in this particular instance, we think, in an unhealthy, in the wounded state, we would think I need to control that person and make them stop yelling at me, or I need to just cut them out altogether, because that's the only thing that feels safe to me, because I need to stop them from doing that. I need to stop this experience for myself. Well, first of all, you can't stop that person from doing it. You can certainly ask them not to, and you should, absolutely, it's totally fair to ask that person to not raise their voice at you, one or two times. And if they demonstrate that they really can't change, I think what happens is oftentimes we already have a story in our head. So we think it's really personal that they're not doing what we ask them to do. And that's, again, why the feeling of feelings practice is important, because what I'm telling you, this all ties in so well together. This actually makes me really excited, because when you have that experience of you asking for a change in behavior, the change in behavior not being able to be done by that person, right? You're going to have hard feelings that come up. And so people not knowing how to handle that situation, not knowing how to actually handle their own hard feelings, continue to try to change that person's behavior, or they cut them out. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But the truth is, if you allow yourself to feel the anger that comes up when that person does that, and the hurt, because anger is not a root emotion. Anger is a surface emotion that hides emotions underneath it, like hurt and fear and sadness and all those types of things. So we actually need to get through the anger to the other ones underneath, but that's another thing. My point is that we need to know we need practices for navigating our own emotional experience from that. And then once we can get ourselves back into a state of peace with our practices and our tools that we use, then we can figure out what the actual boundary is that doesn't rely on us controlling them. Because what's actually happening is when you express something that you would like somebody to change and they don't do it, yeah, we might be angry, but also underneath that is probably just a really deep hurt. And we need a way to feel that hurt, because it's really, if we're already trying to ask for a change in behavior, which is already a vulnerable and scary thing to do, it's a very brave thing to do, we're probably also doing that towards somebody who has already hurt us in some way, right? Because we're asking for a change in behavior. So if that person's behavior had hurt us before, now we're extra hurt. So, oops, hold on a second. Um, okay. What else was I gonna say? Right. So this is especially important here to have our feeling of feelings practice, because hard feelings are going to come up in the process of our boundary setting. Now, the problem with cutting that person out is that in cutting somebody out fully, unless it's like a dangerous situation, then definitely, do what you got to do. But like most of the time, most cases, it's just that we're in a relationship with somebody that triggers us, like a family member, for example. We think we need to cut them out, but really, when you cut somebody out like that, like completely, it actually like sends your brain a message that you're scared of them, and that in order to be safe, you need them to never be around and never be in your presence. And so, while I'm a huge proponent of taking space and time, like take as much distance as you need, I'm not really like a big proponent of the whole like cutting people out thing, because for yourself, it sends the message that you have something to be scared of. I think it's helpful to take distance and time away from that person, but even more so, it's a great, like, the people that trigger us the most are the best teachers of this exact thing that I'm talking about. Because, like, for example, another example of a boundary would be with this particular person that triggers me, right? This, like, family member or whatever. With this person, I don't have phone conversations with them. I only text with them. I only see this person once a year for 30 minutes. I only see this person in group settings. These are all boundaries. Again, promises to myself. You see how all of those things have to do with like what I can control? So then, for example, if this person calls me, I don't pick up the phone because I promised myself that I only communicate with them through text. It doesn't matter if they're hurt, but you might feel really uncomfortable. You might even feel guilty that you're not picking up and that you're just like texting back, or maybe not even texting back. And so again, that's where our feeling of feelings practice comes in. Because now we have to feel the hard feelings of, now I feel kind of guilty. Of course I feel guilty. See what I'm saying? These things like tie together so well. Okay, so Hey, Keek said, what happens when the boundaries you implemented makes the man think you don't like them no longer? Well, see, in that sentence, okay, there's just like a few things here. You really shouldn't need strict boundaries with a partner. The reason being is because inherently boundaries create space and distance within a relationship. You wouldn't really need a boundary if you were trying to build intimacy. Because you should be able to speak your truth. You should be able to be honest in a partnership, in a healthy partnership. You would be able to come to a solution that works for both people. Boundaries are set because somebody has already demonstrated that they're not a safe person for you in some way. That they're not going to be able to see, hear, and understand you in some way. I mean, you can have like, I would say like light boundaries in a partnership, but I would just call those kind of like agreements. But I would say that for this situation, start with the feeling of feelings practice. Because right now your feelings are pointed outward toward about him, right? Do you see how like you are now concerned about what he's feeling? But I didn't hear what you feel in that. So like, what do you feel? We always need to start there. Gorgeous hearted. Any tips on stop looking for love that one of your parents couldn't give? Yes, everything that I'm talking about is the tip. Because this is you learning to be the love that your parents couldn't give you. And like, feel the feelings of that. Feel the sadness and the hurt, the heartbreak, feel the disappointment. Use the feeling and feelings practice. Hey Cakes, it seemed that inner child me was more fearless. Probably. Children are pretty fearless. Ever more you're going to say about cutting someone out? Yes, I did say that. Thank you. This is what I'm dealing with. Scared of certain family members. Yes, Nat. So feel that. Okay, now I'm really glad that this makes sense. Scared of certain family members. So feel the fear, and then honestly, I have 3 practices available. I would say that it might be helpful. Well, first of all, the fear of the family members actually happens because you're not setting proper boundaries with them. So like in my example, if like a certain family member like keeps calling you and you just keep picking up the phone because you think that's what they expect of you, or you feel like pressured to pick up the phone, or you feel pressured to communicate with them, or that's just what you've always done, you know what I mean? Yeah, then you're not actually being authentic to yourself and what feels true for you. Thank you, Hey Geeks. So, the reason you're scared in part is because you're not setting boundaries. And the thing with family members is there's so much shared trauma with family members that it is tricky. It is challenging. That's why you need these tools. There's no way that you are going to be able to get to a state of peace without utilizing these tools or other tools. But in my opinion, these are really great ones. So first of all, you need to get really honest with yourself. Like, what are you still doing just because people expect it of you? If you don't really want to go to the family gathering, but you're like, you feel pressured to, or you feel like, people are gonna like judge you, so you still go, that's you not being authentic with yourself. That's you not having the right boundaries, not setting the right promises to yourself and honoring them, right? And it takes time. It comes over time. So, it's a process. It's a journey. So what I was also going to say with family members, the next step, honestly, like I really would say learn the feeling and feelings practice. But the next step would be energetic protection. And I have that video available as well. Or I think that's an audio. Some of them are audio, some of them are video. So that's like a meditation type thing where you learn how to energetically protect yourself, which is a much higher form of protection. The thing with energetic protection is we don't want to rely on it forever, but it's very helpful when you're learning these skills and when you're like in that space of trying to like set the boundaries, and it feels really uncomfortable. It feels kind of messy. You feel really scared a lot of the times. Maybe people are pushing back. Maybe you're having to have hard conversations. You're not really sure what to do. So like in that messy space, because there's going to be that like messy period of time where you're really learning all of this, and it feels scary. Energetic protection is really helpful because you literally cut off your energy from anybody else that is around you so that they can't affect you. And that's helpful in these stages of your journey where you feel a little bit more vulnerable, so that you can go into spaces feeling more prepared and feeling protected when you do face like that person that triggers you. So that audio is available too. Okay, Gorgeous Hearted, do you find that you get over the hurt by continuing the feeling of feelings practice over time? Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Now, the feeling of feelings practice has nothing to do with what you decide to do, because the point of feeling of feelings is that you get back to a state of peace, or at very least like neutral, which you do. When you do the feeling of feelings practice, you will get back to a state of peace / neutrality. And that's the space where you want to figure out what to do, if anything. But I would say more often than not, when like before I do the practice, I like feel like I'm going to do something, and then I do the practice and I've gotten myself back to a state of peace, and I get to this place where I realize I don't actually need to do anything about this. Like where I was maybe going to have a conversation with somebody or express something, and then after the practice I'm like, I don't need to do that. I think because when you get back to that like state, that stable state, you're able to see more of the picture, and you're able to kind of see like, now that you felt maybe your hurt or your disappointment in someone, you can actually accept without resistance the fact that maybe they're not ready to hear you. Maybe they're not ready to receive your hurt. So it's probably, in some cases, like for me, I can think of times where like before I was like, I'm just going to tell them that I'm like hurt by something. I do the feeling of feelings practice and actually validate and see my own hurt. And then I get to this place where I'm like, I don't think they're ready to see that. I don't think they're ready to receive that from me. I don't think they're in a place where they're going to be able to see, hear, and understand me, and I don't really anymore feel like I need to. But, it might be a place where then it's like, well, maybe that does change the relationship a little bit. And maybe that's okay then. Hey Keek said that makes sense. I just learned of boundaries and they were more strict than soft. Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't like like I said, I don't really think it's healthy to have, in like a healthy partnership, to have strict boundaries. I think like in a partnership, a healthy partnership, because I'm sure there's a lot of unhealthy partnerships where, it can be helpful to have boundaries. But again, boundaries create space and distance. Boundaries are kind of the opposite of intimacy, where you are coming together, like you're decreasing space and distance because you're building intimacy over time. So in that case, I would say it's just more about having an open conversation with your partner about how you feel. And ideally, in a healthy partnership, that person can receive what you have to say, you can receive what they have to say, and you guys can come up with something together. But there's a whole spectrum of relationships that maybe like aren't fully there yet, and perhaps a boundary could be helpful. Like if a boundary, for example, could be like if my partner gets defensive, then I say like, I'm not gonna have this conversation right now. But then again, you should be able to like go back to that, like, because then I think if you're trying to like put strict boundaries in a partnership, like there's there's more like serious underlying issues in the relationship, right? That need to be worked on. I think that's what that tells me. Okay, Lina Lu said, an anxious attachment and my brain is so frazzled, I'm not sure if I can place a boundary or not. So then start with the feelings practice, my dear. I also just don't think that labeling yourself anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or any of those is like super helpful, because again, it's helpful. All of these terms, even like narcissist or gaslighter, these things that we label other people, like none of these terms, even empath. I know people love to say they're empaths. I don't really feel like it's that helpful, because anytime you're labeling yourself or another person, it puts you in a box where you can't get out of that experience. If you're constantly saying, oh, I'm an empath, then you're always going to be like overly affected by things. Right? So, and it doesn't like, I think you're probably then less likely to seek out the tools that you need to create a healthier relationship with your environment and with other people. Like being an empath really just means you need to seek out additional tools. I do think that people I do see a pattern where people that are highly spiritual are or highly spiritually connected, I should say, are also very sensitive. And a lot of people on this journey, a lot of the people, like probably all of you that are joining here, are probably very sensitive souls, right? You're sensitive emotionally, perhaps mentally, physically. A lot of times, a lot of like sensitive people have a lot of physical challenges, mental health challenges. But that also is by design, because you are meant to be the one that is also sensitive to your environment and to the spirit world, to lead the way and essentially creating the connection with the divine feminine that is happening right now in the world, so that all of humanity can build a better connection with the divine feminine, because your emotions is your feminine, and it's what we've all been told to not connect with. So that's why we need to learn the tools to connect with it. So being an empath just means like you haven't learned how to properly have boundaries. Actually, it's a little bit of like and actually really when I talk about the energetic protection, that's actually you creating an energetic boundary. So that's also why it can be really helpful too for empaths. But I don't like any of those terms, because I just don't think we should limit ourselves to that one experience. I like to call those things really like what they are. For example, when people use the word narcissist, I just call it woundedness, because or I kind of describe the like symptoms or the things that are happening. Narcissists, it just is somebody that's really wounded. But we use that term so that we feel superior, and I think that's something we need to leave behind too. Hey, Purple Hearts. Okay, so boundaries shouldn't be for your partner, it's for those you want to step back from. Right. Yeah, like I said, you can have like I just personally, that's my personal opinion. I just personally wouldn't really call them boundaries. If you're able to like talk about them, you could maybe like come up with boundaries together. Like when this happens, we do this. Right? But again, that would be like more of an agreement. That's why I kind of see it more as an agreement. Like when things, let's say like when things get heated, we take a step back. Like we go take some breaths by ourselves or whatever. Like that's our boundary, our promise to ourselves for our relationship, right? Because it's a promise to ourselves. So it's our boundary for our relationship is this. So I could see it more that. I would say like, again, like personal boundaries, like light ones or something. But again, because boundaries inherently create space and distance, it's just not, it just doesn't, it just kind of, that is like bumps up against the goal of building intimacy. So I think you should be able to talk to your partner. And if you can't talk to your partner about the way you're really feeling, then there's deeper issues that you want to try to figure out how to resolve. Gorgeous heart, how do you know when a relationship is healthy? I think you just feel it. I think you are able to be honest in that relationship. You're able to be authentic even as you change. But I think it's more of a intuitive question for you, you know? He keeks, what to do if you feel as if you're experiencing a spiritual burnout or collapse. Spiritual burnout or collapse. I guess I would need a little bit more information. Okay. What about the boundaries some people have for every person? I'm not sure what you mean, my dear. You could feel free to explain. Linalu, my partner aligns so much with avoidant and it hurts our relationship. I know I need nervous system work. I don't know. I think I agree that boundaries always reduce intimacy. Okay, well that's okay. I mean that just tells me that you guys probably need to do more work together, like couples therapy or something like that, because the whole anxious and avoidant thing is really challenging, and you both need to change in that case. Like you both need to work on your own things, and it can work, but that's why I say, like, if you are feeling like you need to set those boundaries, then there's more work in the relation. There's like underlying issues that need to be faced that like you both probably need to face. That's the reason I say that. I agree with the label. It just made me feel validated to put a term to what I'm experiencing. Exactly. I completely get that. I completely agree with that. I think the labels can definitely be very validating. I think we learn the labels, we get the validation, maybe we use it for a while, and at some point we just start to pull away from it a little bit, right? Like we try to expand our experience a bit beyond it. Purple hearts. I agree. Agreements makes much more sense when we want intimacy. That's how I see it. But I can understand other people having different perspective. If I tell my partner that yelling at me is a place she cannot reach me in a regulated... Wait, hold on. If I tell my partner that yelling at me is a place she cannot reach me in a regulated state. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. But again, when we talk about boundaries, they're promises to ourselves. So first of all, your partner... I think there's more work to do if your partner's yelling at you, to be honest with you. But again, like I actually did this. I said this example earlier. Like if this person yells at me, my boundary is that I leave. So I don't tolerate people yelling at me, in that I'm not gonna stand there and like just like let them yell at me, and I'm not gonna yell back, right? Like that is part of the boundary. Like, but I'm also not trying to control that they're yelling at me. I just don't stand there, like, you know, I don't engage with that behavior. Essentially, I disengage with that behavior, so I leave. So, but again, that would tell me that there's some maybe underlying issues that need to be addressed there. That can also open the door for clarity on all the ways she can express her anger effectively. Yeah, and I actually have a anger practice as well available, so I don't know if that'd be helpful for you both, but that's there. Oh, I see what you're saying, Alana. Okay. Also, communicating that boundary is the action. She doesn't reach my boundary because I've communicated. Yeah, I would just say, like, it's not about her reaching your boundary or not. It's about because people can't like I see what you're saying. Like she doesn't like she doesn't do the behavior that is then activates the boundary is what I'm understanding you to say. Okay, my dears, I think that we'll probably end there for now. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all the great questions and all the great engagement. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I hope that it was helpful. And like I said, I have 3 major tools, and I honestly don't know if I'll add any tools anytime soon because those are the tools. Like those are the life-changing ones.